I'm Isla Scritchfield.
And I'm Audrey Scritchfield.
Won't you help a child in need this holiday
by donating to Playtime Project?
Hey listeners, once again, my family and I are collaborating with Playtime Project to help bring much needed toys, family goods, and love and kindness to over 400 children who are experiencing homelessness in DC this holiday season. Visit playtimeproject.org to learn more about them, or go right to their wish list at wishlist.playtimeproject.org. Now it's easier than ever to scroll and see what items are needed in order to help these families have a safer and happier holiday season. This is the third year that our family has been supporting this organization, and I promise you that any effort you can make to support them makes a significant difference. The mission of the Homeless Children's Playtime Project is to cultivate resilience in children experiencing family homelessness by providing and expanding access to transformative play experiences. And we know that this makes a significant difference in the well-being of children's lives. Again, that's wishlist.playtimeproject.org, and you can grab a link for that in the show notes of this episode. Thank you so much, and
Happy Holidays!
Welcome to Body Kindness. Learn and grow.
This is a special podcast series where we help anyone just getting started with body kindness.
We're reflecting on how we have evolved since our earliest episodes. I'm Rebecca Scritchfield.
And I'm Bernie Salazar. Let's get ready to spiral up together.
Coming up, it's a fan favorite where Bernie and I answer the listener questions. First, we answer a question from someone who hates exercise, and we can relate sometimes, and hopefully you really find some helpfulness in our response. Second, we get a question from someone who works in food justice and is increasingly frustrated with the elitism and diet culture that's existing in her work, and she wanted to know if we had advice that could help. We really hope that we helped these listeners learn and grow and move forward in their body kindness practices and their life and work. If you have questions you would like us to answer in a future episode, we are recording these on the regular. Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question and submit yours today. Hey listeners, I'd like to invite you to join me in supporting Diversify Dietetics. You can visit their website, diversifydietetics.org, and become part of their Fund the Future campaign. Any amount that you can donate is greatly appreciated. And I want to tell you exactly where your money's going to go. Right now, less than 10% of nutrition and dietetics professionals identify as people of color. Meanwhile, the clients and patients that we serve are becoming more and more diverse. So we want to bring more registered dietitians from different races and ethnicities so that the people that we serve can receive the highest quality and most culturally appropriate care. I'm proud to be on the advisory council, and I fully support Diversify Dietetics. You can visit them at diversifydietetics.org and donate today. Hey, Bernie, what's up?
Rebecca, I am here and happy to share that we have some reader and listener questions. I personally love them because it means that we're connecting. It means that our community is reaching back out to us. And it's super nice to know that you guys are out there and our tribe is speaking up. So yeah, this is going to be a good show.
Yeah, I love talking to you and hearing the questions, getting your take. And since I was 9 years old, I've always wanted to help people. So this is super exciting for me, and, especially because you have the book, right? And I love Body Kindness as a book, right? There's a page limit and there's a certain focus, and really Body Kindness is a practice that you never stop doing, and it really needs to fit in your life. So I feel like a lot of times when I get these questions, it's almost like counseling, but not really counseling, right? But I just kind of answer what I would say if the person asked me in a counseling type scenario. So I love it.
No, absolutely. And what's great about this too is, as I read and reread Body Kindness, there's questions and clarifications sometimes that I want to be able to kind of reach out to the author and ask. So, as our listeners and readers, maybe come across some of those things that their brains, kind of curious more to expand upon, please continue to write us and share your thoughts and ask your questions. That being said, I'd like to go ahead and share our first one from Paula, who asks, what ideas do you have for low energy people to get moving? I hate exercise. I hate sweating. I hate pretty much anything active. My passions are reading, writing, crocheting, playing with our dogs, and yes, we go for leisurely walks, watching movies. You get the idea.
So Paula, this is why I'm laughing. It's actually like the human tendency to rest. So culturally, we might look at you weird because why aren't you exercising an hour a day? What's wrong with you? But just from the human, it makes sense from a survival standpoint, right? To prefer rest. Rest feels good. You're also talking about these passions of reading and writing and crocheting. I mean, things that use your mind and your hands and that create things that open up your imagination. These are really good, worthwhile activities. I love that you have animals. Animals alone can help boost people's mood. And that helps us, feel good, helps us reduce stress. We feel less lonely. So here's the bottom line with a lot of things that you're saying that you like that you do. I really want you to see these things as also health-giving activities because they are. Because as we transition and talk about exercise, it's easy to kind of just get into one track mind of calorie burns, punishment, diet culture zone, right? Which Bernie, I know you have a lot of experience about. So I'm so curious to hear your insight too. But the very first thing I would say about it is this is really going to be about connecting to your values of why even exercise at all. So you don't have to exercise a lot. In fact, well, let me take a step back. I love to exercise. So I'm not where Paula is. It's part of what helps me sleep. And I acknowledge that it helps me regulate my mood. And I acknowledge that. But I actually am also into the form of a correct push-up. And I am at a place where when I'm doing a push-up and I can feel that it's challenging, that I'm not like, you suck at push-ups, you suck as a human, right? It's okay, here's where we are. We're doing push-ups and this is difficult. Let me breathe through this. And I know noticing that is good for my muscle strength and flexibility. I know that it's good for my health overall, so that there's all these other values that I'm already bought into that motivate me to look for opportunities to move, schedule it, and then do it. And that's where I think the gap is for you, Paula, is just why can't you be a person who hates exercise, right? That is totally okay. And then maybe look to, well, what would non-exercise movement look like to you? And because I know you always already mentioned the leisurely walk with a dog that you're please, Rebecca, don't say go walk your dogs. But I will say maybe get some audiobooks and walk and listen to those. But, outside of that, is there anything that you can imagine? Canoeing, kayaking, hiking, going to a museum, running errands that are more on foot. But just maybe what you're not doing is you're not seeing those as actual beneficial movement. It is okay to move in short window bursts of time that add up. And I'm a big fan of finding purposeful exercise too. So I had a client who got into water Zumba, and that just made me laugh, imagining through the blasted speakers, right? Fun and energizing music and that joyful feeling of being in the water and laughing and being silly. So in all honesty, I think you're going to come up with your own ideas. What it's more likely going to be is really step into who you are. And I don't have a healthy relationship to exercise. I actually hate exercise. I really don't like to sweat, but I still know that it is good for me. So take weight loss, diet culture concerns out of it and think of other things you value that you know to be true about exercise, even though it's not your habit yet. So if it is things like I mentioned earlier about sleep or mood or just knowing that it's good for your heart and that you care about your heart, like that can be enough, caring about the people that you want to be there for, but not in a, I'm going to die because I didn't run this week kind of way. Just generally speaking, be very gentle with yourself. And I would encourage you to go on experiments and explorations where you just give yourself 3 months of trying different things and seeing what might pique even a small amount of interest. Let that be enough. Learn and grow from there and build from there, and maybe find some new social friends, or, not people who are going to be like, think that exercise is punishing, right? Like you already think that, right? Maybe try to find a friend that knows a restorative yoga that can get you to go and be open-minded about it. And you decide that you did enjoy that yoga and you also enjoyed the brunch you did after. And so it's sort of like, okay, on the whole, this is meaningful time well spent. So I'm going to put a pause in it there and see what you think about it, Bernie.
Well, I really want to thank Paula for sharing this question, because I think that there's a lot of listeners and people in general who probably feel this way towards exercise, that we don't acknowledge, or like you said, we just don't understand or want to right away chastise for feeling this way. But Paula, I'm more in your camp than not. So I can relate. But one thing that's helped me, and I can just speak from my perspective, is I did start with my passions. You clearly say that, reading, writing, crocheting, playing with your dogs, watching movies are all things that you generally enjoy doing. One thing that I did is, I also enjoy reading. So it's just changing the environment in which I'm reading. Rebecca also mentioned books on tape, but some people definitely just love holding a book, flipping the pages. Is that something that you would consider possibly doing in a different location, maybe not in your home? If the weather permits, can you do it in a park or in a place that, you are moving your body a bit to get to? And taking in, just the sights and the sounds and the air and the sun. I mean, to me, that is, really caring for yourself. And also, it's redefining what exercise means to you. And I think that that's really important, right? Because I know that one of the things that really hindered me and gave me this negative feeling about exercise in general was that I was always equating it to my past experience, and it having to be intense, and it having to hurt a bit, and it having to push you to places that, were uncomfortable for it to be effective. And that's not the case. So for me, it was taking the time to redefine what exercise or movement or self-care look like for me, coupling it with my passions, has really helped me come a long way. You say that, again, I'm going to reading or writing. Let's say that we're looking at a favorite author, or, there's a favorite script or text that you enjoy reading. If you're in the area, where maybe that was written about, it's never hurts to plan a vacation, or even in your hometown to visit some of those sites and things that are in the book to help bring greater depth and understanding to what you've just read. Movies. I love it when I can identify a scene in a movie that is in my hometown. And then going to visit that and connecting with it on a different level. So those are things that I've done that really bring so much richness into the things that I'm passionate about, and also as a side effect happen to help me move my body in a way that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bernie, those are really great insights. I love when you talked about going to read somewhere else. I got this vision popped in my mind about like a beautiful library, right?
Yeah.
And if you live close enough where you feel like you can walk each way, or at least walk there, right? Or if not, can you get sort of close, then park or take public transit, right? And then finish the walk there. And I definitely work with that with clients on work commutes, and also just sort of like, what if I can build it into my day, Rebecca? Because I will share with clients, when you're trying to make it a habit, maybe don't expect that everything that you do for exercise over a 7-day week, because you've got other things to do, maybe don't expect that it's all like magnificent and joyful. But it's kind of like an like an all business walk. I will walk the last 10 minutes into work, or I will, and I'll walk to and from. So it's 20 minutes a day. And, our country's not built like, say, in Copenhagen, where people ride bikes everywhere. That physical activity would have been kind of built in there. So try to bust up those ideas. And like Bernie was saying, connect to something joyful and adventurous. And on that day to day, like, is there a way, like, could I get a short 10 or 15 minutes done in the morning, and then boom, it's checked off the list. And I feel grateful that I did it because I care about movement on the whole. And this is manageable because it was a short amount of time and it just involved a little bit more walking than I would typically do. That maybe you're not there on the woo, everything's amazing day one, but what you're doing is you're lowering the barrier to taking meaningful action by shortening the time and kind of repeating it consistently. And then I love the idea on your days off. Like, how can I be more creative and adventurous so that you're going to hear that voice. Oh, this sucks. Thank you, mind, for reminding me that. And I also care about moving my body, in less punitive ways. And, I don't have to sweat, but I might have to, get in a bathing suit and do a water aerobics class if I want to avoid sweating, but do something physical indoors in the wintertime, so there might be some give and take, but your inner caregiver will in some way say, let's try this and see.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, this actually, as I continue to read your question, Paula, really is exciting because, again, if you're passionate about the text that you're reading or what you're into, like, it could be really fun to set things up for yourself to go experience that. Or even with the crocheting, like, you're like, how can that be active? Well, depending on what you're making, and who you're making it for, it's delivering it, it's engaging, it's finding maybe an organization that is accepting gloves or hats or scarves or whatever it is that you're doing, and connecting with people, and then from there, it's just so much more of a rich experience. And one thing that Rebecca does, and I don't know if you guys are following her on Instagram, but I love it when you talk about the Exorcist stairs because again, I'm not a huge like horror movie watcher, but again, those stairs were in the movie The Exorcist, and they are beasts of stairs. And I'm not saying, Paula, that that's what you want to do, but there are ways to connect to the things that you find pleasure in. And when I lead with pleasure, especially when it comes to movement, I find that I'm not as resistant to it, and that it really pays off for me in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just to reinforce the idea, how can you reframe when something feels challenging and difficult from like, you suck and you're never going to be this dream exerciser, to, hey, I don't love exercise to begin with, but I know it's good for me. I want to try to change my relationship to it. So here are some things I'm willing to try. And when it's challenging, it's okay to be challenging. I can take a rest. I can decide that I don't like this and I need to try something else, but just gentle compassion as you go through the experience of doing it. And yeah, it's, you will eventually find a better workable relationship to movement into your body. I just don't want you to feel like you're doing something wrong because you don't love it. Lots of people don't love it, and they feel so much shame that they don't love it, that they continue to avoid all exercise because they hate the punishing stuff,
Absolutely. So, Paula, I hope that helps. I want to go ahead and move on to our second reader and listener question.
Yeah.
This is Lythisha, and she asks, I work in food justice, where my work centers on increasing access to fresh food in primarily low-income communities of color and educating folks on making dietary shifts that are more health-promoting and better for the environment. I love my work, but unfortunately have experienced shame for how I eat. In this movement, people often have polarized ideas of how people should eat. Only organic, only local, only vegan, low waste, etc. Some of the rhetoric I hear, I'm realizing now, can also unintentionally promote disordered relationships to food. Even the way we sometimes talk about using food as a way to support our health in a country where healthcare is not always accessible can sometimes sound like we're saying, if you don't eat in a health-promoting way, it's your fault if you get sick. I would appreciate advice on, one, how to navigate eating what I want in spaces where people have loud opinions about how we should be eating, and two, how we can talk about food access issues and climate change without resorting to restrictive eating and shameful language. Thanks.
Oh, Lythisha, I am so happy that you wrote in. But first, I want to say thank you for all your work in food justice. Even though, yeah, it's amazing. And just as someone who grew up food insecure, and, like if you would have tried to, teach me privileged things, like the privilege of intuitive eating and just saying no to food if you weren't hungry when it was around, I would have been like, huh? It wouldn't have fallen correctly. And so, I appreciate all the work that you are doing. And you're right, it is really hard because of elitism. And it's elitism that I definitely see in the United States. And also, so there's several things. There's also healthism. And you mentioned healthism in your question. It's this idea that like, oh, if you eat a piece of meat, then you hate the planet and you hate your health and, horrible things are going to happen, right? Like we're all policing each other as if all of our health is built up on our personal day-to-day choices. So I'm sure you know about the social determinants of health and that there are many other factors that can impact somebody's current health status, physical and emotional health, and also disease risks. And it's much more likely to be things like poverty, safety, racism, and the things that offer access for us to even be able to engage in eating in a certain way that helps promote health and well-being as a pattern, right? Not individual rules. And also a good night's sleep or safe places to move our bodies and exercise or time off from work to enjoy conversations with people we care about to build deep connected relationships. So there is a lot outside of our individual choices that impact what access to health we even have. And definitely, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the 2 podcasts that I did with Sabrina Strings, as we talked about that a couple different times. And I'll make sure to include the link in your question and answer for the show notes here so that you can grab those. I'm going to help you with respect to boundaries around your conversation, because ultimately, I think that's what I feel like you're asking is like, I want to feel good about the work I do without people trying to get all up in my business. And people should be out of your business is the bottom line. So this first question about loud opinions about how we should and shouldn't be eating. Whenever I see loud opinions, I also see privilege, right? Because the way privilege works is we give the platform to the loudest voices, to the people who have the most resources, and they take up the space and they suck the energy out of the room of who may have a more marginalized experience. So what you can do with yourself personally is stop and think, when somebody's spouting an opinion and that opinion feels loud to you and they're talking about shoulds, right? As if there are no other barriers. I would stop and ask yourself, am I listening to a person of privilege? And what are those privileges? And someone could have a marginalized identity, like they could be a higher weight person, but they have economic privilege, right? Or they could be a person of color, but they have thin privilege and economic privilege. And so, chances are they're going to have multiple privileges. And that's why they're able to be so loud. What's interesting about this too is that it's not that we want to say, oh, and everything that you're about is wrong and you're an evil person too. It's like we are all human beings. And it's possible that the person who's being loud and advocating for something like being vegetarian or vegan or saving the planet, that it's because they care deeply about something and they're really trying to help others care deeply about it too. But it comes off as yelling and not listening to other people's experiences. So it's more about shouting and less about communicating and learning and growing together. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is actually express some empathy, right? In the way that I just explained, and like noticing their privilege, trying to express empathy for where they might be coming from. And Brene Brown has a great phrase where she'll say, what's the most generous assumption you can make about this person? And sometimes you got to dig deep, right? Because that alert is going to be like, oh my gosh, once again, this person is not seeing the big picture. So let that anger be there. It's allowed to be there. And then just pause and take a deep breath and say, what is a generous assumption I could make about this person? Because I think you're going to find an opportunity to see if you see a place where you might be able to influence a person of privilege. Because if they're carrying that privilege, they also have the power to change something. And even though they are taking this space where it's loud and they're centering what they care about, if you have the energy to engage in a conversation with them about what they're saying and they're not yet seeing, that can be really helpful to help open their eyes and to help them see a little bit of common ground. Because I think there's a lot of potential crossover here. In Body Kindness, when I wrote about, like, it's literally you choose to eat in a way that works for your family. And I got to go in advocacy of first, what do you have the money for? Because like frozen fruit has nutrients, canned vegetables has nutrients. And I love that your work involves bringing access to fresh produce as well, because I don't like to see the food waste that we have, and I don't like to see hunger. And there's got to be ways of increasing access, and the ways that we can increase access to that food and also change the system and the structure that keeps that person with lack of access in poverty. We also got to make those big systemic changes too, right? But if we're there telling them, okay, fresh is best, and now that you've had this fresh strawberry, don't ever go to a frozen strawberry again, like how helpful is that? And chances are the person who is promoting this sort of narrowly accessible, elitist way of living and being in the world, they didn't have the personal adversity that would make them know better to do better. And so they actually need that conversation from you to help open up their eyes. And what they need, unfortunately, is lots of empathy and compassion in the way that you approach them. You do not have to do that labor every single time, but when you feel that that person is reachable and teachable, right? If you do that labor, you put an effort into trying to help them see a bigger picture and to focus everything they do going forward and learning more and changing how they talk about things and putting money into programs that could make an even bigger impact. So I just want to encourage you in that regard that you actually know a lot more than this person of power who has a loud opinion, but you can be very helpful and beneficial in their own learning that can help shift a greater impact than you can do alone. So sometimes that labor might be worth it, but also give yourself a major pass. Remember, NMP, not my person, not my problem. Just walk away. To the second point, so I'm assuming you're talking about like the collective we, like how can we collectively talk about food access issues and climate change without resorting to restrictive eating and shameful language. And honestly, I think that you have the power of your own voice and of your own message. And I think it's about noticing the ands. So saying, yes, and let's not lose sight of the fact that while we all care about the planet, and whether that's we need to fly less often, and how do we take local trips and get joy out of them? I really think a lot of climate change conversations, the biggest impact can be made through companies and businesses. And I do not, I compost. So we do our things as a family. We have steel straws and we compost, and we can hold space for these personal concerns and take meaningful actions as individuals. But it could be that when you're engaged in conversations around climate change, that you engage in some connect and redirecting for them. Yes, and we can't hold individuals personally responsible for damages to the planet. What are we doing at working with companies to make big systemic changes? So this way you're not like kind of ignoring what that person is caring about, but you're opening up their minds. And, with respect to food access, I think that it's more conversations around privilege and oppression. So talking about the social determinants of health to people, any ways in your work in which you can share stories of how it's unfair to expect the most marginalized people to also do the same things that the most privileged people are going to do. So we should be focused on eradicating poverty in our climate change conversations by giving the most marginalized, especially economically marginalized people, access to more money for disposable income around food choices. They can improve their overall eating patterns on a daily basis, and they have the ability to then make choices that support our climate change concerns. But we cannot be continuing to oppress the most oppressed people. And that, again, is going to be because of your awareness, bringing that into the room. And I got to tell you, and I know from experience, it is uncomfortable. You're going to feel a burden to do it every time. And I'm really going to want to give you permission to say you don't have to do it every time. But I want to encourage you to be brave when you're uncomfortable and it's your job to make other people uncomfortable. You can do it with respect and compassion, but they can't go on ignoring the real issues. They need to become aware of them. And if they respond in a fragile way, know that that's a basic and common human response. You still made an impact, even if you don't see it right away.
No, I, Rebecca, just really appreciate hearing your response to Lythisha's question. Resonated with me on so many different levels. I just want to take pause and also say, Lythisha, I think it's wonderful that you have identified this. I want to recognize your strength and the beauty in being yourself, and how much of a bold act that can be in, like Rebecca said, being willing to open yourself up to some of these conversations when you feel it's appropriate. But this, like Rebecca said, is no easy thing. And it's something that even, I've encountered in different ways, not necessarily always around the questions that you specifically asked. But when you're in an uncomfortable situation, sometimes, and Rebecca, I think you said it really well, sometimes it's okay to have them feel uncomfortable with you when engaging in a respectful dialogue. And I think it goes back to, are they reachable? Are they teachable? Because a lot of times, even the most privileged, lack access to information that actually would better serve the entire topic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's social justice work,
Yes, absolutely. And Rebecca said it again, it's a lot to take on. And when you're up to it, be up to it. And when you're not, then that's okay too. But truly appreciate the questions that were shared today by our readers and our listeners. Please feel free to continue to share them. We absolutely love them.
Yeah. And if you'd like to submit a question, it's bodykindnessbook.com/questions. And that's our show. The podcast is made possible with support from listeners. Please donate to help offset production costs at gofundme.com/bodykindness. And please rate and review the show when you have a moment. It really matters. Let's keep the conversations going on Facebook. Search Body Kindness and request to join the group for Body Kindness readers and listeners. Have a question for us to answer on a future episode? Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question. Body Kindness books and audiobooks are available wherever books are sold. To request a signed print copy, visit bodykindnessbook.com/order. For other questions about this podcast, please email info@bodykindnessbook.com.